little bit of review about our beginning, middle, and end. So when we're writing our beginning, middle, and end stories, we use these special words. And these special words include first, next, and last. Those are the ones that we used yesterday in our book. So we have 3 parts. Today I want to show you another tool that narrators use when they write good stories. So I'm going to tell you 2 different stories right now, and I want you to tell me which one sounds more exciting, okay? So here I go. Here's my first example story. One day, I saw a bug. And that was the end of my story. Now my other example is this. Wow! One day I saw a bug. It was green and black. It was huge. Now, story A was the first one. Story B was the second one. By raising your hand, which story sounded more exciting to hear? Samuel, which one was more exciting? B. I agree. I think that story sounded a little bit more exciting. What I did, boys and girls, is I used something called a hook. If you've heard of the word hook, can you raise your hand and tell me what it is? What does a hook do? I want you to raise your hand and tell me, what is a hook? Have you ever heard of a hook?
My dad, he kept going on a boat. He said, hook.
Oh, so like fishing, right?
Yeah.
So
That's what I always use.
yeah, okay. So hook. A hook when you're fishing grabs the fish, right?
Mm-hmm. It sticks it.
Yeah.
It doesn't have to.
So we use hooks in our writing, but it's kind of a different hook, but it's the same exact idea. Hooks grab things. So a hook in a story grabs the reader's attention. It grabs the person's attention that's reading the story. So different kinds of hooks that we can use. Samuel, I'm going to have you mute, please. Thank you. Go ahead and mute Samuel. Thank you. Hooks. There's different ways to use hooks. We can use them by having questions, a setting, a sound, or something funny. So, when I did the sound, I went, whoa, because I wanted to get your attention and talk about this huge bug that I found. And I said it was green and black. So before I even started talking about the bug, I said, whoa, or I could say, wow. That's using a hook. I want to grab your attention just like a hook grabs a fish. That's my job when I'm writing stories. We could also ask a question. So I remember a while back, Brackett had told me a story that he was writing about a peregrine falcon. Brackett, can you tell me about that again?
What?
Do you remember when you wrote about the peregrine falcon and how fast they fly?
Yeah.
What was that fact that you wrote?
They can fly 240 miles per hour when they dive into the sea.
Awesome. 240 miles per hour. So a hook that Brackett could use when he's writing a story is asking a question, and he could say, did you know that peregrine falcons can fly 240 miles an hour? When you start with a question hook, that really grabs the reader's attention. It makes you want to read it even more. Or you could say something funny. So think about how you want to use a hook in your writing today. You're going to be using a brand new book for your writing, but I want you to concentrate on using a hook. So if you have something really cool that you want to share with the class, maybe you want to ask them a question like, did you know? And then you can tell them. Or maybe you want to do what I did and use a sound. And you could say, wow, I saw this cool bug. It was green and black. It was huge. See how I'm using these sounds and movements to make my story a little bit more exciting. Or I could say, ah, there's a dinosaur chasing me. And I put the sound ah in there. That's a sound I can use. That's the hook that I'm using to grab you and make you want to read my story. So I want to hear some examples from people who want to use hooks in their writing today. So I'm going to look for hands raised. Sander, what kind of hook are you going to use? What kind of hook are you going to use? A sound. Okay. So what kind of sound are you going to put in your writing? Okay, so thump. So he could write thump. And maybe he wants to write it really big so that it really grabs the reader's attention. That's a good one, Xander. Kieran, what kind of hook are you going to use? We have question, setting, sound, funny. Kieran, I can't click on you because you're playing with the mute button. So I need to go to a next person and then I'll come back to you. Sophia, what kind of hook are you going to use? Do you have a tree? Hey, that's a great question you could ask. Good job. I bet you're going to talk about your Christmas tree, aren't you? Kieran, are you ready? Yeah. So when they say the setting, they're saying that where the story takes place. Okay, that's all right. So for the setting, if you wanted to use the setting as your hook, you could say it was a dark, cold cave. And see how that kind of grabs your attention? Like, ooh, I want to read that story. That's what I'm talking about, the setting of the story. So that would be kind of a cool idea too.
Can you write it?
Yes, I'm gonna do my example so you guys can see. Okay? I want some ideas. Who can help me start a story about something funny? A joke. Okay. So I could say, knock, knock, and I could say knock, knock, and then I could tell my joke before I start writing my story. That would be kind of funny, wouldn't it?
What's the date?
The date? Right here. But you guys are supposed to be watching right now, and then when we get into our breakout rooms, that's when you start in your book, okay? So an example is I could start with a joke. And I could say, knock, knock, who's there? And then my joke might lead to my story. Does that make sense? All right. So for my story, boys and girls, I want to start with a setting because I think it would be cool to talk about the setting of my story. So I want to start with it is dark and cold. And that's all I'm going to put. And the reason I'm doing that is because I want to hook the reader into reading the rest of my story. Because if they just see that, they might ask a question like, well, where are you? Then on my next part, that's where I would talk even more about that. And that's where they're going to discover what I'm talking about when I say it is dark and cold. So that's an example of using the setting. You can ask a question, just like we used brackets example. You could do a fun sound, like Xander said he's going to write thump. Or we could write something funny, like a knock-knock joke. So, brand new book. Make sure you have your brand new book out with today's date, and we're going to go into breakout rooms, and then I want you guys to get started. Practice using a hook for your story, okay? If you need help, you can ask me or Miss Cheatham, whoever's in your writing group. You're going to ask for help, okay?